Christ is talking about the rapture in Matthew 24:27-28. He says, "As lightning comes from the east and flashes to the west, so will also the coming of the Son of Man be." That's verse 27. Then verse 28 speaks about where the bodies are, there will the vultures be gathered. Now, how can this be talking about the rapture? Well, like I've said in several other videos, previous videos, the rapture will coincide with the sudden destruction in 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 3. What is happening is Christians are departing the world as their bodies are being killed by the sudden destruction. There is a cause and effect relationship between people being killed and their souls departing the world. Try to understand that souls, saved souls, Christian souls, are not leaving the world just because God is blowing a trumpet. Chapter 4, verse 16 and 17 puts it that way. It makes it sound like, at the trumpet of God, Christians are caught up. It's time to put away childish things, like the Apostle Paul said in 1 Corinthians 13:11. In reality, the so-called trumpet of God is the bombs exploding, the roar of the bombs exploding, nuclear bombs. Nuclear war, Russian attack is taking place at the time of the sudden destruction, at the time of the rapture. The sudden destruction in 1 Thessalonians 5, verse 3 should be the answer to the question, what is revealing the man of sin to be the son of destruction and the destroyer? It says in 2 Thessalonians, the rapture has to wait until the revealing of the destroyer takes place. Well, what would logically be the thing that makes somebody the destroyer? It would have to be his act of destroying something, launching destruction. Since we live in the age of WMD, weapons of mass destruction should be what the sudden destruction is talking about. It would have to be, like I say, logically the thing that makes somebody the destroyer, that reveals them, that exposes them, that marks them as the destroyer, the worst destroyer, the most destructive person of all time. He's going to be more destructive than Hitler, Stalin, and Mao combined. He's going to kill more people. Hitler killed like 20, Stalin killed like 40, Mao killed like 60. You put them all together, that's 120 million. Well, if Russia bombs America's big cities, and wipes out half our population, that's 170 million people. Okay, so far we've learned that the sudden destruction is man-made because it's what reveals the destroyer. It would have to be his work if it reveals him to be the destroyer. And so it's man-made. But what is the purpose of his launching mass destruction? Well, in Revelation 13:7, this same man is called the beast. It says he will make war against the Christian nations. The saints would refer to the Christian nations. And it says he will overcome them, and he will gain power over every nation. So the implication is that the reason he's launching destruction, sudden destruction, is so he can take over the world by bombing the leading Christian nations like America and the nations of Western Europe. This connection in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 3, between the rapture occurring and the sudden destruction occurring, the sudden destruction here is implied. But it says the man of sin will be revealed as the destroyer. And like I say, that implies sudden destruction taking place. So here we clearly have the rapture occurring, coinciding with sudden destruction, which, like I say, Revelation 13:7 explains to be wartime destruction. He's making war against the leading Christian countries, and that's why Christian souls are leaving the world. Christian souls, not all Christian souls, but the Christian souls in the big cities of America will be leaving the world when those cities get bombed. Now, Christians in other countries, like countries in South America, countries in Africa, and Australia, and in Europe, those Christians won't go up at the rapture. But there will be 3 countries in Europe that get bombed. That's Daniel 7, verse 8. Which nation is Revelation 13:7 referring to? Well, because it says this nation takes over the world, it cannot be anything less than a superpower, a nuclear superpower, because if any lesser nation tried to do that, one of the 2 superpowers could wipe that nation out. So by logic, by reasoning, we can pin down the superpower nation that takes over the world to be Russia. There's 2 superpowers, America and Russia. America is out of the question. We're not the type that tries to take over the world. So that leaves Russia, Russia, Russia as the obvious choice. Russia is predatory enough. They're communist. They're still communist behind the scenes. And their history, the history of the rulers of Russia, particularly Stalin, and the rulers after him were all followers of him. And that's true today. Now, I said all that so I can lead into Matthew 24:27 and 28. Verse 27 and 28. You see, the Russian attack that I've been talking about would be the East attacking the West in a lightning-fast attack. And Matthew 24:27 clearly says that in the end time, that lightning will flash from the east and go towards the west. And at the same time, verse 28 says, there'll be bodies that the vultures will gather where the bodies are. So it's talking about slaughter, great mass death. Christ is not being arbitrary here. He isn't saying east lightning going from the east to the west capriciously. You might think that he could easily say lightning will go from the west to the east or from the north to the south. No, no, no. He says from east to west because he's saying that deliberately. He means specifically the lightning going from the east to the west, and that's because the action at the time of the end, the time of the tribulation, which is the time of the rapture. The rapture is at the time of Russia taking over the world, and that's Russia ruling the world is the trib. So we're talking about the end time here. The lightning going from the east to the west is talking symbolically of lightning warfare. The German word blitzkreig means lightning warfare. And that's what Christ is talking about with this term lightning. Lightning warfare will take place from the east to the west. Russia will attack Western Europe. But at the same time, they'll be attacking America. And the Russian attack on Europe is in Daniel 7, verse 8. It says, in black and white, there's 10 horns, which stand for 10 nations. That's in verse 24. And 10 horns stand for 10 kings. But the kings stand for the nations they rule. So we're talking about 10 horns, and then it says, another horn comes up among the 10. Another horn invades the other 10. This is talking about one nation invading 10 nations. And the context is the Roman Empire, in other words, Western Europe. But this is after the Roman Empire has split up into like 30 nations, but 10 nations are focused on. But it's talking about Western Europe, and but America will be attacked by Russia because we're the leader of NATO, the European alliance that is actually led by America. I want to say it one more time. Christ has the lightning going from the east to the west for a reason. R-E-A-S-O-N, reason. It's not arbitrary. East to west does fit what I said earlier about a Russian attack on Western Europe. The evidence for Matthew 24, 27, and 28 being a military action is not very strong by itself. But when you combine it with the other things that I said, combine it with 1 Thessalonians, the sudden destruction at the rapture, and then the revealing of the man of sin as the destroyer in 2 Thessalonians, you combine that with Revelation 13:7, you put it all together, and you do have strong evidence, because that stuff there points to Russia attacking the West. So that's the real basis for Matthew 24:27 being what I said it is. Try to get that into your heads. We're talking war, nuclear war, Russian attack. Get it into your heads. The rapture, you might say, well, how can Russian attack explain this part of what happens at the rapture where it says that dead in Christ rise first out of their graves? No. Put that aside. The idea is that the rising first of the dead in Christ would not happen at the rapture. The rising first for people already in their graves, that happens when they die. When Paul was stoned to death in Acts 17, he died. And that would be when he was caught up to the third heaven, which he talks about in 2 Corinthians 12, verse 2 through 4. He says, I know a man who was caught up to the third heaven. And he's talking about himself, but he wants to be modest. He doesn't want to boast and say, I was caught up. So he says, so-and-so was caught up. Or this man was caught up. This other guy, he puts it in the third person. But the fact is, he was caught up when he was stoned, when he died. That's when people are caught up to heaven, when they die. So don't expect people to rise out of their graves at the rapture. It's not going to happen. Get that into your heads. I will put a transcript of this video in the description under the video. So please look it up and make a paper copy, because when nuclear war comes, EMP in America will destroy the computers, and if you want to save anything, it's got to be on paper. So please take advantage of the time that is left. I think we have till the end of September. And let me close this video with a statement of hope, statement of victory. Christ will come and defeat the Russians after just 5 months. They will have victory for only 5 months. He will take their victory away after just 5 months. That's from Revelation 9, verse 5 and 10. And Matthew 24:22 says he will shorten the trib from the 3.5 months, 3.5 years. That's in Daniel 7, verse 25. You can throw that out the window. The real tribulation will last only 5 months. For you people from other countries that are watching this video, I really want to reach you, because you will be living here after the trib begins, after the rapture has come and gone, and you will not be going up in the rapture. But you do have a message of hope for your neighbors and for your country, and the message is that Christ will defeat the Russians. And what you should do now is tell people that Russia will bomb America, so that when it happens, they will see that you have been right, and they will come to you and they will believe in you when you tell them what happens after that, namely that Christ will come and defeat the Russians after just 5 months. I'm talking about you people in India, Pakistan, Korea, Africa, South America. Please share this information with your neighbors.